It's funny that I've spent a lot of time recently discussing authenticity in K-pop and the longing people express for more self-produced works within the industry. All the while, Chaeyoung was shaping a project that meets this expectation more decisively than really almost anything else in recent memory when it comes to K-pop. What Chaeyoung has delivered with Lil Fantasy is one of those rare releases that feels so entirely authored, crafted with her own sensibilities as an artist at the center of the album's vision. If you're a fan of Twice, you probably already know that the art style tied to Lil Fantasy has always been a part of Chaeyoung's personhood. Her doodles and visual quirks have shown up across official Twice projects over the years, very small traces of her inner world spilling into the group's presentation, but here, and for the first time, that distinct aesthetic is brought to the forefront. Lil Fantasy is a glimpse into the world Chaeyoung has been sketching for most of her life, and its significance is outlined with unexpected poignancy across the album's 9 tracks. The title track, Shoot, acts as a guiding sentiment for this journey. It's a song about leading with sincerity, about, quote, shooting from the heart, even if doing so leaves you vulnerable to being burned. As a standalone, it certainly feels like a modest entry into Chaeyoung's catalog, but within the album, it shines as an emblem, really kind of an overture that frames how we should listen to everything that follows. Leading with your heart, right? Its companion, the pre-release Avocado, works almost like a prologue in this sense. Chaeyoung explained Avocado as her take on the Garden of Eden's forbidden fruit. The avocado is something that she reaches for, embraces, and is ultimately undone by. The irony, of course, is that she's devoured by the very thing she entrusted. It's both a little humorous and eventually symbolic, I guess, wry acknowledgement of temptation and consequence, and I think ultimately, this album feels like a case study on the true nature of choice. Taken together, these two songs do a lot to set the stage for what Lil Fantasy really is, a drawn world that operates as Chaeyoung's counterpoint to her superstar existence within Twice. While her group career has been defined by relentless energy and, at times, relentless scrutiny, the soundscape she builds here is intentionally unhurried. It's mostly calm and meditative, and when it isn't, the instrumentation takes a couple steps forward, clearly interested in pulling a feeling from your heart by cloaking it in a great sense of atmosphere. The album becomes a place of vibrant color and relative silence, where you can pause long enough to actually feel things. It reads in one way almost like an escape hatch from the intensity of idle life, a world designed to process everything that entails. If Shoot is about daring to lead with your heart and Avocado is about paying the price for reaching beyond what you're allowed, the rest of the album becomes a kind of recovery process. Songs loosely suggest and grapple with questions of whether it even matters, whether fame or the hundreds of thousands of voices pulling at you from every direction are worth the weight they carry. By slowing everything down, Chaeyoung kind of asks us to reconsider what's actually important, both for her as an artist and for us as the listeners. This is where Lil Fantasy feels very novel for K-pop. I am not gonna lie, it has been so very hard to process this album just because of how different it feels. It feels like such a new frontier for K-pop. Chaeyoung's art direction for Lil Fantasy carries a clear line back to one of her most cited influences. Of course, Tim Burton. That same gothic surrealism, the convergence of the cute but strange and awkward, unsettling at times, all of it is threaded throughout the album's visual identity. Her drawn figures, whimsical and childlike in shape, are never allowed to remain pristine. They are marred, stretched, and disfigured in ways that make them feel immediately uncanny. And yet, rather than stripping these characters of their charm, the scarred distortion adds a depth to the music. To me, it reflects how fame, or even just the weight of living with difficult emotions, leaves its imprint on us. These drawn figures, like people, are forever altered by what they encounter, by the badness of the world, right? By hardship and scrutiny. But I guess crucially, these characters aren't reduced to those scars in Lil Fantasy. They continue to hold their own value and autonomy. Chaeyoung's work seems to suggest that beauty and strangeness can coexist, and that imperfection itself can become a kind of authenticity. Again, this has been a difficult album to process. I don't think I've ever been more on board for an idea behind a project ahead of its release. Avocado was an exceptional choice to set the stage for this album, and the visuals and concept work surrounding this release were cohesive in a way that made Chaeyoung's vision feel clear from the outset. Yet when you actually sit with the album, it reveals itself as something disarmingly atmospheric. That isn't a weakness, but it does arrive at a moment when, I would say, public sentiment around airy, ambient pop trends leans towards fatigue for most people. What makes Lil Fantasy stand apart, though, is that it seems to earn its atmosphere. The conciseness of many tracks reinforces this. When a lyric or phrase is repeated, it feels deliberate. We're being asked to pause and question why those words linger. So I think what's most challenging and rewarding about the album is how artistically heavy it feels to consume. This first glimpse of Chaeyoung as a soloist makes clear that she's long deserved a moment like this of her own, and she seizes it by curating a project that feels deeply intentional at every single turn. Even the collaborations aren't tacked on for novelty. The featured artists are highlighted with genuine respect and a desire to build something meaningful together. The result is an album that feels wholly lived in, sculpted with so much care, and presented as a world Chaeyoung has been drawing privately for years that is finally shared with us. Yeah, I mean, more than anything, the first impression I carry away from Lil Fantasy is just how immaculately produced it is. Every detail feels placed with purpose, every decision reinforcing that this is authentically Chaeyoung's work, an increasingly rare commodity in the wider landscape of K-pop today. Lil Fantasy is an album worth celebrating for so many reasons that are hard to pin down. I mean, for what it represents, of course, in Chaeyoung's career, but also for the sheer technical craft that underpins it all. The album's 20-minute runtime leaves you with a profound sense of longing, the kind that really snuck up on me after the album ended. These songs feel quick, almost fleeting. They're very short in duration, yet they linger in ways that are difficult to shake off. Part of this comes from Chaeyoung's very thoughtful use of indie textures, especially the very bare guitar work in tracks like Girl and, of course, the final song Guitar. You know, stripped of very heavy production, the guitar is left to breathe in its rawness, filling the space with a disarming emptiness that inspires both wonder and unease. I feel very uneasy by the end of this album. Lil Fantasy, like the album itself, almost feels like a character Chaeyoung has drawn, one that carries the distinct touch of her Tim Burton influences. Its movements are subtle and animated, swaying between moments of stillness and then sudden bursts of energy, much like the way Ribbons lifts into quick flares of brightness, or how Downpour flows with such a steady rhythm. Lil Fantasy wears its scars openly in this existential mellowness. They're here for you to notice, etched into the quiet cadences and atmospheric stretches, but the album never lingers on them long enough to indulge in any kind of despair. Instead, it feels like the music is simply asking you to, acknowledge these scars without naming them aloud, to let those shadows exist alongside the beauty of what Chaeyoung has created. That's what Lil Fantasy means to me on the first couple of listens. It's a well-crafted fantasy world, but one with a disarming sense of dimension. It's childlike in nature, but marred by things unthinkable or just simply difficult to process. The weight of that pain goes largely unshared, which, it makes me feel bad for the metaphorical character that is this album. But in many ways, this works to mirror Chaeyoung herself, an artist navigating the contradictions of stardom, where things like joy and exhaustion, beauty and distortion all have to coexist in such fragile harmony. By shaping Lil Fantasy as a world and also a character of its own, Chaeyoung finds a way to externalize those complexities, processing the invisible marks fame has left on her while refusing to let them define her. What is given to me as the listener is a companion piece to her identity. Scarred, surreal, dark at times, but very luminous. It really feels like stepping into one of her drawings. Lil Fantasy doesn't really shout out its significance or beg for your attention. Instead, it just lingers, pulling you in slowly, asking you to notice the very small shifts, the scars beneath the surface, these bursts of color in an otherwise muted landscape. I think that is the real triumph here. Chaeyoung has given us an album that feels genuinely alive, or cognizant or aware of its own existence. I don't know how to explain it. I've never felt this way about an album before. It's alive in the way her drawn characters are made to be. It's certainly a work that demands time to digest. A companion that grows stranger yet more meaningful the longer you sit with it. Yeah, I don't know. If this is only volume 1, I don't know. 10 out of 10. What a slam dunk for a debut album. This is what I think. This album has been hard to process, but in a very rewarding way. I really, really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you for watching this. If you did, let me know what you think about this album, the overall vibe and atmosphere, the production, and things like that. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe if you want to, and I will see you next time.